Hello, everyone. Hello, Midnight in the Garden, and hello, Isn't It Romantic Book Club. My name is Diana Munoz Stewart, and I am here with Sharon Wray to celebrate to celebrate the release of her new novel, uh, in Search of Truth. Um, I am the author of the Black Ops Confidential series that includes I Am Justice, The Price of Grace, and The Cost of Honor. And it's about a secret society of female vigilantes that travel the globe righting wrongs against women. And Sharon is the Deadly Forces author, and she is a librarian who once studied dress design in the couture houses of Paris, ooh la la, and now writes novels of suspense, adventure, and love. A wife, mother of twins, I love that. Caretaker of Donut, the one-eyed rescue dog. She's addicted to snapping photos and eating Oreos, and that's a good addiction. She writes about the men in Deadly Forces romantic suspense series where smart, sexy women teach their alpha males that grace always defeats reckoning. Her best-selling debut book, Every Deep Desire, was a sexy, action-packed retelling of Romeo and Juliet. It was about an ex-Green Beret determined to regain his honor, his freedom, and his wife. Welcome, Sharon, and happy release day!
Thank you so much, Diana. I'm so happy to be here, and thank you all for joining us on both pages, the Isn't It Romantic Book Club and Midnight in the Garden. So Diana is awesome. She set this up for us because I told her I'm so technologically challenged. I don't think I would have been able to do that.
We're slowly getting better at this.
We are. So yes. So I have to say, each time we do this, it gets a little bit easier.
Right, exactly. So the live streaming is something we really like to do to connect with readers and kind of have interaction that's more than just, comments on a page, but
right, or liking gifs and
right.
things like that. Yes, definitely.
Right, exactly. Okay, thanks everybody. I see you guys there. So I see your comments. So Sharon, you were going to read a little bit of your new novel?
Yes.
Okay.
So, In Search of Truth comes out today. It's like Diana said. Oops, trying to figure out the camera here.
The third book.
It's the third book in the Deadly Forces series, and the Deadly Force series is about a group of ex-Green Berets that were dishonorably discharged in Afghanistan and then released into the world, and they have no idea why. And so each book progresses that mystery forward as far as what happened to them.
And your husband is military, so
paramilitary, and he also works for the U.S. Army. And I also have a lot of family members in the military, so it's very nice because anytime I have a question, I can just email somebody and figure out.
Well, then you have to go through a special procedure when you publish. Do you have to be reviewed or?
Yeah. So until recently, a very, very dear friend of mine ran the public affairs office of the Pentagon and worked for the Department of the Secretary of Defense. And he, in the beginning, especially in the first couple books, when there was just a lot of military action referrals. So the Army's not like the Navy, where they'll throw out naked Navy SEALs anywhere. Just publicity. The Army doesn't do that. They're much more closed about the information they like to give out.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually had people comment saying, well, that's not accurate. And I wanted to say, well, it was.
Why had to change it? Because Army won't let me say that, right?
Anyway, so up until so the third book was vetted, and then they'll vet my novella, and I'm not sure if I'll need to do that going forward, but we'll see. So yeah, it's always interesting to get their feedback.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I was just going to read the prologue. So this is the third book in the series, and the hero is named Zach Tremaine, and the heroine is named Allison Pinkney. Okay. When was the last time you saw a man bow? Allison Chastain Fenwick led Zach Tremaine onto the courtyard of Le Petit Theatre. Nestled in the French Quarter of New Orleans, the humid, flower-filled courtyard provided a reprieve from the freezing theater. A breeze tinged with jasmine and white lights wrapped around the trees enhanced the romantic summer night. No idea. Zach took 2 flutes from a server's tray and handed her one. The champagne tickled her nose. As the courtyard filled with intermission-freed guests, Zach found a clear spot near the raised fountain. Why? She asked. he asked. When I was leaving the ladies' room, she sat on the fountain's edge and her gown pooled on the bricks below. I bumped into someone. I apologized, but he just wrapped his arm around his waist and bowed. By the time I blinked, he'd disappeared. Maybe it's a Charleston thing, he said. It's certainly not a New Orleans thing. She sipped her champagne. It's not a Charleston thing. It's a weird thing. So it has to be from New Orleans, which you would know since you're a native Cajun. Zach threw her a fake offended look, says the woman whose Charlestonian names are so old she has to use both of them. She laughed at their ongoing joke about the differences between their hometowns, and she punched his shoulder. The U.S. Army had turned him into a wall of muscle, so her fist probably hurt far more than his shoulder. He smiled, took her hand, and kissed her palm. Maybe it's a formal thing, she offered to keep the peace. He was wearing a tuxedo. At this last word, she raised her eyebrow. While she'd chosen a long blue satin gown in honor of Hamlet's opening night, Zach rarely wore anything other than jeans and T-shirts. She was happy with his pressed gray trousers, white button-down shirt, and striped tie, despite his almost shaved black hair. When he pulled at his collar and scanned the courtyard, she hid her smile behind another sip of champagne. It would not surprise her if he was armed. Glass broke behind her, and she glanced toward the noise. People were clearing away. As they drifted from the mess, she saw a solitary man in the corner. He stood near a potted palm with his hands in his pockets of his wrinkled, ill-fitting blue suit, the kind of suit someone borrowed or rented, not owned. The other odd thing? He was staring directly at Zach. Zach tapped her shoulder. Since we haven't seen each other since graduation, let's make some toasts. The first one is to me. She laughed out loud. To you? Yes. He held up his glass. Congratulations to me on completing the Special Forces Assessment and Selection course. Soon, hopefully, I'll be a Green Beret. Oh my gosh. She stood and gave him a hug. After they'd graduated from Tulane, Zach, who'd been an Army ROTC cadet, had hoped to become a Special Forces officer. She was so very happy for him. She pulled away. She raised her glass. May you win every battle and always return to us safe and sound. Us? Zach's brown eyes shuddered and the lines around his mouth deepened. Of course. Stuart. Stuart will be happy for you too. He's your best friend besides me. She fluttered her eyelashes until Zach smiled again. Zach was sorry he couldn't make the play. He'll meet us for dinner later. Zach raised his glass again. Here's to you crushing your cultural anthropology PhD program. They clinked glasses, and Allison ignored Zach's quiet laughter. She knew what Zach and Stuart believed, that the only job a cultural anthropologist PhD could get was as a barista. Despite what you think, Allison tried to kick him with her high-heeled sandal until he moved. I'll get a job that doesn't require asking people if they want whipped cream on top. Now Zach laughed so loudly people glanced their way. My turn. She lifted her glass with her other hand touched the sapphire and diamond engagement brooch attached to her neckline. To your best friend and my future husband, Stuart, just elected Tulane alumni president. Oh, we're ignoring that. Sorry. For our class year. I'm certain he'll become a bank president before he's 25.
That's bank president before he's 25.
Sorry. The audience began to file back into the theater, leaving them alone. Neither one of them wanted to return to the play. I'm sorry I missed your engagement party. Zach gave his glass to the last server standing. I was training. I understand. She cleared her throat and handed her glass away as well. She drank almost all of it, and her head felt fuzzy. I sent you photos. I got them. Zach crossed his eyes, and his arms and his gaze settled on the brooch pinned to her dress. Allison, are you sure marrying Stuart is the right thing to do? Why would you ask that? I know you, and I love you. The courtyard lights reflected the truth in Zach's eyes. They stood so close, his breath caressed her forehead, and his insanely sexy bay rum cologne sent tingles down her arms. Stuart loves me, and I love him. I'm certain of it. Certainty is an impossibility. Zach pushed a stray curl behind her ear. She shivered at the touch of his fingers against her face. I don't understand. You're not in love with him the way a woman is supposed to love a husband. Her breath snagged, making it hard to breathe without hyperventilating. He had always discerned all of her insecurities and vulnerabilities. Here, alone in the courtyard, she was defenseless. Zach, I'm begging you to rethink this marriage, he said. Stuart may be able to give you the security you think you need, but it'll never be enough, not for either of you. What are you saying? That Stuart will break my heart? No, Zach whispered. You're going to break all of our hearts. She blinked as he lowered his head. When his lips touched hers, her first thought was that they were so much softer and gentler than they appeared. He held her head at the perfect angle so he could deepen the kiss. In all the years they'd known each other, he'd never touched her so intimately, and now they were locked in this embrace, and she wondered why. Horrified at her reaction, Allison pulled back and pressed her fingers against her mouth. That's when she noticed two things. the ill-suited man moving closer, and another tuxedoed man following behind. This tuxedoed man with dark skin and green eyes was the bowing man she'd seen earlier this evening. Something glinted in the bowing man's hands. A small sword. Zach? Zach twisted just as the ill-suited man pulled something out of his jacket. Zach grabbed her by the waist and they hit the ground. Her hands took the brunt of her fall, scraping on the bricks. The pain made her dizzy, but not enough to ignore the action she saw from beneath Zach's larger body. The bowing man moved behind the ill-suited man and slid his thin sword into the man's neck. The ill-suited man silently slumped to the ground. Suddenly, with Zach on one knee and holding his handgun, the bowing man pressed his sword point against Zach's heart. Hold your peace, the bowing man demanded in a distinct Australian accent. Do not fear. Tonight's violence has been met and needed. Zach put his gun on the ground and rose slowly, both hands held up in surrender. The bowing man retracted his sword, which became a thin 10-inch long wand of steel, slipped it into his jacket pocket. My name is Laertes. I venture here tonight to bring a message and a warning. Allison took Zach's hand and he helped her up, making sure she stayed behind him. He didn't speak, so she didn't either. Not that she could cobble together any words. All she could do was stare at the dead man, keep the nausea at bay. With no visible blood, he seemed to be asleep. Laertes took a cell phone from the dead man's pocket and tossed it to Zach. The dead man's messages were open, and Zach clicked on an image. A short, silent video appeared along with the send and read receipt. Allison's body shook. The ill-suited man had texted the video of their kiss to Stuart. Zach handed the phone back to Laertes. Laertes glanced to one side, and she noticed another tuxedoed man deeper in the shadow. She grabbed his arm. There were two of them. But my lord, said Laertes, has decreed that now is not the time for your understanding. He put the phone into a different pocket than the sword. Now is tis time for a change. What are you talking about? Zach asked. Laertes hit his own chest with his fist. My lord believes you are not meant for your life's work. You have other passions that he'd encourage you to pursue. Is that the message? She took Zach's hand. Or the warning? The warning is for you, my lady, Laertes said to her. Choose your lover wisely. She took a step back and swallowed the bitter taste in her mouth. The veins in Zach's neck bulged. Before they could respond, Laertes wrapped an arm around his waist and bowed. My lord must be cruel, only to be kind. Thus bad begins and worst remains behind. So,
oh, wow, that's fantastic.
So the Laertes is a member of a group called the Fianna, which is a group of assassins that they're like a private army, but they don't work for any government, and they are highly disciplined, and they only speak in verse.
Oh,
verse,
okay.
And they
Fantastic.
And they're based on actually an ancient Celtic order of warriors that did the same thing during the time of the Roman invasions of Great Britain.
Well, that was really cool. But I feel like Allison's had plenty of warning not to marry this guy.
I know. And this takes place, I can't even remember now. I think it's like 6 years before the book actually starts. 5 or 6 years.
Oh, wow. I love that. I love that there's a gap and that they can catch up later.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. And this book is set in multiple locations, right? I mean, it's not just...
Yes. So
they're traveling a lot, right?
Yeah, they are. So the first two books, so these books are very Dan Brown-like with like hot sex. They're very, because there's always a complex mystery that takes place in the past, and they're trying to figure out what the past has to do with the present and what these past legends and myths would possibly have to do with the 21st century, Green Beret team, Special Forces team. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of mystery and puzzle solving throughout these books. And this one, they're actually looking for a 300-year-old pirate treasure. That's what they're going to end up looking for. In the other books, they all take place in Savannah, Georgia, in the outlying Sea Islands. And they were pretty self-contained, where they moved from the Sea Island to downtown Savannah and the surrounding areas. But this book, I did something different. I actually took them from Savannah to Charleston, because that's where Allison lives, down to New Orleans, back to Charleston, and then to Savannah. And it was really different. It was really different for me as far as plotting, because the timing is completely different. When you move, you can kill your pacing.
Yeah.
Because you end up talking about things like how you got there, and then what you did, and like eating, and and then you have to add in extra time. So you have to add in extra nights. And with a romance, there's this assumption that every night there's some kind of adult action going on, but not always, right? So
right.
it was a real learning experience. I'd never written a book of this broad of a scope before. It's a long book. It's 134,000 words.
Wow, that's a historical
Yes,
length book.
yes.
Well, and it does seem to be kind of, it has a little bit of history in there.
Yes.
You know, you have 17th century pirate mysteries mixed with ex-Green Berets. So
Yes, yes.
why did you do that? What gave you the idea for that?
I liked the idea when I started coming up with the idea for the series. I liked the idea of taking 21st men of action, and we're speaking specifically of special forces soldiers that are all male.
Mhm.
You know, they have the technology, they have the money, they have the backing. They can go after whoever they want at any time they want. But I liked the idea of pulling them out of that and leaving them defenseless and powerless. And not only do they have no money, they have hardly any weapons. They're on their own. They're living in this cheap, crappy, kitschy, pirate-themed gym in the rundown part of Savannah. They are also out of their element because they have to deal with things that they know nothing about. And I've always loved the unsolved mysteries of history.
Mm.
And so having to face like whatever happened to them in the current day actually has to do with something that they had never even heard of before. That means they can't fix it on their own. That means they have to go find someone. And that's where I bring in the heroines. And so the men carry the action in the books, but the women carry the emotional resonance of the books and a lot of the intelligence, hyper intelligence, as far as how to solve these problems because their first reaction is always physical, right? So
yeah. So this takes them off their game a little bit and has the male-female complementary dynamic going on.
And then, of course, there's always the physical saves them in the end, but there's a million twists and turns in these books, and it's always the women, the heroines, who are figuring out the complexities of the twists and turns. And then this one, and all the books are actually steeped in real history. And this one, they're looking for Henry Avery's pirate treasure. And Henry Avery was a real pirate in the late 1600s who took the largest pirate treasure ever recorded in the history of all piracy up until today. It's worth probably today, I think I did like $64 million. And it disappeared. And then he disappeared. And he's one of the very few active pirates that was never caught or hanged. Or never brought to justice, and no one has any idea what happened to him. They have no idea what happened to the money, no idea. So in this book, I resolve that. I came up with the story, and another real. So Allison, who's from Charleston, is related in the book to the only witch in the history of the United States who was accused but never named, and it happened in 1704. It was about 10 years after Salem. It had never happened before or since. She was one of the very last people accused in the colonies of witchcraft. And to this day, no one knows who she is. But her accusation and the judgment of the Chief Justice that got her off is still embedded in law at the Supreme Court.
Wow.
That's why we don't have witchcraft trials now. So I had her as a direct
so cool.
And this woman lived at the same time as Henry Avery. And there's evidence that he was in Charleston in 1704 when she was being accused. So in my book, they're lovers. The unnamed witch and Henry Avery are lovers, and they hid the treasure together.
Oh, cool!
He was being tasked by this group of assassins, to find this treasure before another separate arms dealer comes looking for it. So that's
that's fantastic. I love that plot.
It was really fun to write. I did ton of research, but it was really, really, and I ended up leaving most of it out, right? Because you do all you have to leave all.
Well, how does this relate to the dog named Nicholas Trot?
So Nicholas Trot is the Chief Justice of South Carolina who got the accused witch off. And he is a very interesting character. He was from England, but his uncle was the governor of Nassau, and his father was the governor of Bermuda. So he came from a legal family in the early colonial times, and he truly believed in witches. And he felt the case against her was so weak that it would actually hurt that they would never ever
prosecution of real witches. Right?
He wanted to prosecute real witches, and since she wasn't, he felt that was going to hurt him. But he ended up coming up with such airtight rules as far as evidentiary rules, that no one has ever been accused or prosecuted since. And like I said, you still find them in the Supreme Court dockets. It's still all there. And there wasn't even a Supreme Court then, but his rule ended up making its way all the way back up to Boston, where it was codified up there, because they were still dealing with the traumatic after effects of having killed, like 65 people were accused. So there was a lot of turmoil up there, even 10 years later. There was a lot of anger, a lot of bitterness. And so they took all of his rules and codified it up there, and then it just spread. And so she was the last formally accused person. There have been other accusations, but they were all thrown out. But she was never named. And my whole life, when I read that, like, why? Like, why? I mean, that's just so awesome. We know the history of every single person accused of witchcraft in this country. Like,
and so you answer that question in this book.
That question in the book. Yeah.
And you just made up one for us, right?
Yeah. And it's fun and it's sexy and it's actually really fast paced. I mean, a lot happens. They're moving around. There's Cajun dancing and there's great food.
There's a ghost and a 17th century witch and modern day arms dealers and assassins.
So
I
yeah. So I named the witch Mercy Chastain, and that's her ghost is supposed to haunt Charleston.
So I love that name.
Yeah. So her ghost is supposed to haunt. And so then Allison, when she got her dog, she named him Nicholas Trot after the man who saved her ancestor.
Oh, that is so cool. I'm so excited to read this. Oh my God.
And Nicholas Trot in the book, Nicholas Trot is a beloved member of Charleston society. There's menus named after him. He has his own parking spot at the public library.
Oh, wow.
The parade on July 4th. It's crazy. The book is kind of crazy, but it's fun.
It sounds amazing. I'm so excited to read this. And did you have a giveaway associated with this release?
So I'm going to do a giveaway for both pages, so 2 separate giveaways, but they're going to be the same thing. So I'm giving away
for both groups. Isn't it Book Club and Midnight in the Garden?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Great. So each group will pick one winner, and they're going to receive the first 3 books in the series: Every Deep Desire, One Dark Wish, and then In Search of Truth.
Oh wow, the full series.
The full series. So
that's great. So how do they win?
Just leave a comment. Just leave a comment. It could be
a live stream video underneath this live stream.
Yes, please leave a comment. Live stream video. Let me know if you like books that have historical context in them. How's that?
Okay. That sounds great. And how long will it run till the contest?
That's a good question. Why don't we run it until I'll announce Thursday morning.
Okay. That'll give people a little time to watch the video and comment, and that's a great prize. So, and both groups get a full set of
and with all the swag associated with it. Yeah.
Oh, yay.
I have to ask Diana. So you have a new series coming out soon, right? The
first book in my Bad Legacy series, Broken Promises, is releasing in June, and the series is about a serial killer who targets a group of women, and these women get together and turn the tables on the serial killer.
Oh, that's
romance and love. And
when is it? When are you hoping to release it? June?
The beginning of June.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'll have a date soon, and I will have the book cover release very soon. So.
That's great.
Thank you for asking.
Oh no, I'm really excited because I love the first 3. I love the first 3 books that you wrote in the novella. The first 4.
Yeah, right.
I'm looking forward to this one. And I'll be honest, I can't see the comments right now on Facebook.
Okay. So someone said, "What led you to research these people and events?"
My husband's from Charleston.
Causey said that.
Oh, okay. My husband is from Charleston, and I met him when I was 16, and I was from New Jersey, and I started going down there as a young woman, and he grew up in a very remote sea island. Like, it's now not so remote, but back then it was. And there were people there. The Gullah people still lived on the isle, and there was always stories of ghosts, and they had their own language. And my mother-in-law was head of the Charleston Garden Society, and so she was always giving tours, and I just learned about this history, and it was so different from the history of New Jersey. Like, totally different. We didn't have pirates. We didn't have anything really interesting other than, like, most of the Revolutionary War was fought there. That's it. So I just fell in love with the history down there, and I never learned it in high school. So I just started, I'm always going on ghost tours down there and learn. There's all sorts of crazy stories that happen in the South. which I just find as a girl from the North really interesting. So that's how I started getting interested in it.
And somebody wants to know what inspired you to become a writer?
I was a librarian. I was not a public librarian. I was a corporate librarian. I worked actually in big pharmaceutical companies. I was a chemical and patent librarian. And I also designed wedding gowns on the side. I have a design. Anyway, so I was doing both of those things. And then I got pregnant with twins. And that changed everything. And then I lost my job. I was laid off during my pregnancy. So that ended, and I had to give up my sewing room to be a nursery. So I lost that. I didn't want to go back into public library work. I was not good at it. I liked being in the private closed sector. Like I liked doing hardcore research. I was not good with just the general openness of it. I'm too introverted. So my sister-in-law, Karen Kramer, who's also on this page, was writing for, I don't remember if she was published or not yet, but she is a St. Martin's writer. I think like 15 or 16 books for them. And she was writing, but she was also writing for newspapers. Like she was just a writer. And she mentioned to me, she goes, why don't you start writing? And I was the first thought, oh, that's crazy. But then I did. And that was, I want to say 2003. And then I joined RWA in 2004 and finished my first manuscript in 2005.
Wow.
And then I was published 2018.
Wow, good for you.
It took a long time, but that's how.
It takes a long time. I don't think people realize.
No, it took a really long time, and it was because I lost everything else. Like I literally, and after my kids were born, I couldn't go back full time because we had so many medical issues, and I had to be home. Like we were always.
Yeah. So you needed a creative outlet.
Yeah.
And that had been taken from you, and you decided, well, let's just jump into something totally different. Yeah. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it was great. So.
Good for you. Well, this has been so much fun. I've enjoyed this so much, learning about you and learning about this book. I'm going to read it. I'm really excited to read this book.
Thank you so much. Yeah. And I'm really excited. And Thursday night, we have a live stream with Kate Ballinger.
Yeah, that's right.
Really
Cowboy Wolf.
I know. It's such a great book. I have so much work to do. I just want to go back to finishing her book.
I know. It's so much fun. It really is.
That's at 8:30, I believe, right? Eastern Standard Time?
It's 8:30 on Thursday night, right? Eastern Standard Time. Thanks, everyone, for showing up and hanging out and commenting. We see you there, and hello.
And any comments you leave, I'll go back in later today, and I'll make sure I answer all your questions.
Right. So if you comment in Midnight in the Garden group, you're entered for one contest, and if you comment inside Isn't It Romantic Book Club, you're entered for the other contest, and if you comment in both, you're entered for both.
Oh, that's right. You have two choices. So thank you all so much for spending the day with me, and I hope you enjoy the parties we're having on and all the giveaways we're having on the Midnight in the Garden page. A bunch of really wonderful friends of mine are posting and just adding to the fun. Oh, and happy Mardi Gras to everybody. Hope you all got a king cake.
Happy Mardi Gras.
Bye.
Thanks, Sharon. Thanks for being here. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, Diana. Bye.